Are the Golden State Warriors finally done? What do we make of this season? What happens with them for the foreseeable future? Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I can't be the only one who thinks that there's something a little bit sus about Larry the Cucumber. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. It helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. Are you using the playoffs to be a double banger? You should be. That means you can watch the video, you can listen to the audio, you can double bang in other ways in your life. That's your business. But for me, I just want you to do both of those things and thumb it up and leave your comments and subscribe and 5-star reviews and blah, 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 blah. Because I think there's something that we can get out of these shows. I hope there is, because I'm spending a lot of bloody time on them when we're looking at season in reviews and talking about players. And I think they're somewhat entertaining, but also there's a little bit of information for us to gather out of it. And I think that building a base of knowledge, not only for fantasy, but just watching and looking at the NBA, helps you become a better fantasy player, helps you become a better viewer of the game, even if you don't agree with what I say. And some of you won't all the time. That's totally okay. You don't have to agree at all points, but just, I guess, hearing different perspectives or the way to view things, I think is a great way of getting better at things. Anyway, that's enough. What would you call it? Self-manipulation? Let's talk Warriors. They missed the playoffs, of course. Their key players are old, very old in some cases. Their free agency decisions are coming up. They've got an all-time legend on this team that I don't really know, not what he does, but what you do with this squad. It is massive decision time coming up for the Golden State Warriors. I'm not really sure what sort of decisions they're going to end up making. And that makes it a tough position to look at this team for fantasy. They were, and I said, and some the smart ones of you would have caught the foreseeable future joke at the start of this show. But Steve Kerr kept saying, well, we're going to do this for the foreseeable future. And then a game later, he would change it. And we're actually going to do this for the foreseeable future. Then he would change it 4 games later. Actually, this is what we're going to run with for the foreseeable future. And then he'd change it again. So even in this season, we got no real idea what direction they want to go. I'm not even sure they know what direction they want to go, to be honest. Let's take a look at the overview of this squad, where they ended up, what we can look at in the offseason. They had the same record as the Sacramento Kings. Both teams obviously missed the playoffs. 46-36. I talked about this on the Kings show yesterday. If you haven't seen the Kings show, go watch it. It's pretty good. The net rating difference is huge. That's because we talked about the Kings being a luckier team. Plus 2.2 for the Warriors on their net rating. I didn't write net rating there. Normally on the graphic I write net rating. Apologies for that. 10th best offense the Warriors had. 15th best defense. So you look at that and go, 10th best offense, 15th best defense. That's actually okay, isn't it? It's not bad. And you're right, it's not. But they still, 46-36 is not bad. So we can say doom and gloom for this Warriors team, but that's not a bad record. Like we said with the Kings. Yes, they didn't make the playoffs and they didn't push forward, but it's still not bad. The problem is with the Warriors, you've got so many decisions to be made. Their preseason over-under was at 48.5. So people expected them to be a little bit better, expected them to be in the playoffs. I had them initially, what did I have them at? 47-35. I amended that to 48-34. So I would have got the under by half a game, which doesn't really count. Obviously, they won less than that anyway. At least they didn't go over. So yeah, they were a little bit less than my expectations. In the draft, they don't have a first-round pick. This was part of the Andre Iguodala salary dump trade. It ended up in Memphis, went to Boston, ended up in Portland. So they don't have the first-round pick. They don't have their second either. They end up only with pick 52, so they're not going to be doing much damage there. Where did their second end up going? It ended up going to... I don't even know. Looks things went to Memphis. I think we partly went to Memphis. Yeah, anyway, so they don't have that pick. But they get the Rockets pick here at pick 52. So I don't think they're going to be making much noise with that sort of a selection. Their most common starting lineup. They, like I said at the start, went through many different iterations of what they were doing. Chris Paul started sometimes, Klay Thompson started sometimes, Andrew Wiggins started, John Kuminga started, Brandin Podziemski started, Trayce Jackson-Davis started, Kevon Looney started. The only constants were Draymond and Steph, and their most common starting group was Steph, along with Podziemski, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Green. So no Klay, no Chris Paul. Draymond at center. That was their most common starting group. Was it their best lineup they threw out there? No, their best lineup was actually an amazing plus 38.3. And what I found really interesting looking at this is it's all the old farts, basically. Steph, Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, John Kuminga, yes, and Kevon Looney. No Draymond, no Podziemski, no Jackson Davis. Curry, Paul, and we said, look, well, how does Curry and Paul play together? Is it going to work? Looney looks washed, and I think a lot of that was true, but for all their lineups over 100 possessions, this was the best one with a huge net rating. I think, again, there is certain things to look at with that, whether that's useful. I think it's more surprising than anything. Does it mean, hey, they should have just run with this more? I don't think so. But it is a little bit of a surprise to see that come up. In terms of free agency, got 3 restricted guys. 2 of them are two-ways, Jerome Robinson and Usman Garuba. And then there's Lester Quinones, who started as a two-way guy, got converted halfway through. He's restricted. I think he'll be brought back. Garuba and Robinson, 100% no. But Garuba, maybe, probably not. The unrestricted one is where it gets pretty interesting. We're talking Klay Thompson and Dario Saric. Klay. A year ago, you would have said no-brainer, gets a max, ends his career with Golden State. And despite him being a part of that best lineup we showed before, he was not very good for big chunks of this season. Lack of consistency. There are certain things that happen when you get older. You can still see the peak sometimes. And this happens with Steph as well. You still see the peak. You go, well, look, he did it. 10-game run here. But it's the consistency. It's the drop-off in the other things. Is your defense still elite? No. What else are you bringing? Consistent three-point shooting? Not really. Can you still hit the peak? Yes. Less often? Yes. And that's part of the issue with Klay is that he's, this sounds harsh, but he's turned into like a one-trick pony who's inconsistent at doing that. When he's 34 with multiple traumatic leg injuries, that's understandable. But he also had to deal with a lot of psychological stuff. Coming back from injuries, but also, and he was open about this, I'm not like speculating. He said this is why I'm saying it. He's like, yeah, it was hard for me to be like, why can't I do the things that I do or have done at that level? How do I deal with this? Like, he just struggled with that a lot. He got angry at teammates. He got pissed off at himself. He tried to do too much. That really impacted him very clearly. And now, who knows? I would say we're at least 50-50 whether Thompson's back. Dario Saric played some center on this team. He started off pretty well, but he did fade towards the end of the season. He is a guy that feels like just going to bounce around, be a 20-minute-a-night backup center on multiple teams, and not really ever push into a large role. He was part of the foreseeable future starting group at times, or one of those iterations anyway, and just moved back and forward out of the rotation towards the end. He was useful enough, but on this team, he doesn't really make a lot of sense. Gary Payton's got a $9 million player option. It's fair to say he'll pick that up. Payton is a really strong defender, but injuries kill him. He's got a bit of the Alex Caruso's about him. Jalen Suggs goes so hard that his body can't hold up to it, but he's older. He's like 30, or he's actually about the same age as Caruso, maybe a year older. And the offense is way worse. No one's paying him $9 million. And with the way this Warriors team is, like, the role is not super clear for Payton. And his defense is what happens when you get to this age. It does fall off. So he's picking that up, but his role remains very unclear. There are some important non-guarantees. Kevon Looney's got $8 million non-guaranteed. You would think, I know he's been a legend on this team, but he's not worth that now. And there's a chance that he goes, but it is almost guaranteed, I would think, that Chris Paul is not playing under this deal. He's got a fully non-guaranteed $30 million contract that guarantees on the 28th of June. He's either traded and then cut by another team, or he's just cut. They might bring him back on a cheaper contract, but there is almost no way that the Warriors are keeping him with a $30 million fully guaranteed deal at age 39. I maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they just say, well, if we cut him, we can't really replace him. But I just don't see how they're doing this. I don't see him back at all under that deal. Again, maybe they cut him and bring him back on a minimum contract or something. I don't know. But that doesn't make any sense to me, especially on a team that's not very good and does want to start to... They pay a lot of money, but they don't want to be hitting second aprons or anything like that for a team that's not very good. The other one who has a non-guarantee is Guy Santos, who came across in the middle of the season. A couple little flashes. I think we're a Warriors team. We've got no draft picks. We sort of don't know where you're going. Like a guy that was a second-round pick a couple of years ago, I'm not sure he ever makes it as a rotation guy, but I'd probably want to just keep him around just to see. After he's played half a season in the NBA, I'd just like to see what happens. There are 3 guys who will be, outside of some of the guys we talked about on those non-guarantees already, like Paul and Looney, who will be playing on expiring deals. And 2 of them are very important. Rookies, first-rounders, lottery picks, John Kuminga and Moses Moody. They could be on expiring deals. They're obviously rookie extension eligible. If they don't sign the rookie extension by, 30th of October, they become restricted free agents after next season. And that's the decisions they have to make. The other one is two-way Pat Spencer, who'll be a restricted guy after this season. The Kuminga one, I believe he will get an extension. The Moody one, I would, if I was Moses Moody in his representation, I'd be like, can you just get me to a different team, please? I'm not getting the chances here. There's other guys that you think have passed me. I'd like to get a shot to play somewhere. I still really believe in Moses Moody, but it obviously has not been a super strong start to his career. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Maybe you want to find someone for your small business that does want a super strong start to their career. You want the right people for the job because getting staff for a business is one of the key components. And as a small business owner or someone that's responsible for the hiring for a small business, if you get the staff wrong, well, that is a gigantic hole to be able to dig out of. LinkedIn Jobs is not just another job board. There's over, how many is it? 1 billion. 1 billion professionals that you get your job placed in front of to find the right people for your job. Small business owners report that they get a qualified candidate to their job within 24 hours, 86% of the time. That is just an amazing strike rate. Amazing strike rate. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. The old terms and conditions apply. Okay. Starters. There were a lot of them. It's hard to narrow down exactly the way this team's going to go direction-wise. I feel safe to say that they won't go into a season with Kevon Looney as a starter. I feel safe to say that Chris Paul's in no shape at all to be the starter for this team. But I've got 7 other names that I think are worth discussing here with this team. And we will start with the obvious one, who is clearly going to start and one of the best players of all time. And that is, if that graphic ever decides to load up, there we go, Steph Curry. Steph is amazing, clearly. But we saw the cracks. And that's always going to happen to somebody. Once you get past age 29, once you are an elite player who gets past age 33 or 34, something happens. I was too high on Steph in the offseason. His ADP was 7. That's about the spot I had him. I expected he'd be able to be pretty similar to the year before, but he wasn't. And that's where we start to get the worries. 33 minutes in 74 games. Injuries didn't stop him. He was 19th in -1. He was 30th in points leagues. And he did it with 26 points a game. Almost 5 threes. 4.5 rebounds and 5 assists. I think the assists, I didn't probably drop them enough with Chris Paul arriving. Back in the day, and obviously that's not now, but Steph used to be a 2 steals per game guy. He got 0.7. He shot 45 from the field. He used to be way better than that. And he's still an elite shooter. 41% from 3 is elite. But Steph used to be high volume, 42, 43 from 3. But also 58, 59 from 2. And he had 51. These things, the steals dropping, but more importantly, the 2-pointers dropping, finishing, mid-ranges. It is one of the big, I don't know if it's a red flag, but it's an indicator for the things starting to go, oh, hang on, didn't mean to push that. Just for old time's sake. It's one of the indicators of things starting to drop off. So I would absolutely not touch Steph in the first round next season. Yes, Chris Paul might not be there. The assists might go back up. That is true. But if he doesn't maintain 40% shooting, and he probably will, what if he gets hurt? What if the 2-pointers decline again, which is the usual pattern for people this age? The two best comps, and it is hard when you are a legend and you are in year 18 and age 36, not going to be many comps around, but Chauncey Billups in year 15 and JJ Redick year 13. The similarity score for them wasn't actually that low, but that's the sort of player he was in terms of, it's not based on just pure box score stuff. But we know who Steph is. He's still awesome. 97th percentile EPM, 94th in crafted. His passer rating dropped. This was the lowest passer rating of his entire career, 64th percentile. Now, part of that is just wasn't throwing as many passes, but also the passes just weren't as good. And is that because the role was different, or is that again because you just lose a little bit of a step? Your advantage drops somewhat. Teams aren't as fearful as you get into the rim, so they play the pass a little bit more. All that is possible. So while we might say that Chris Paul might not be there and Steph might get his assist back, maybe his ability as a passer isn't quite at that same level. And it sounds like I'm just shitting on Steph. I'm not. Like he was awesome, very clearly. He was great. Just not doing it in the first round. No way. A 36-year-old I'm taking in the first round, and I was wrong to do it last season. At age 35, shouldn't have done that. Should not have done that. What about Draymond Green? I'm not going to get in here and litigate mental health problems that Draymond may or may not have. Anger management issues and suspensions. We all know about them. His play on court was pretty good. He is 34. He only played 55 games, but you can't think about Draymond from a fantasy perspective without considering those suspension issues, those ejections. He played only 27 minutes a night. And one of the things we've talked about with Draymond for a long time in NBA discourse or in fantasy is that he's small, he plays center. There is going to be a pretty steep drop-off at some point, and at the moment, his body just can't play enough most of the time. But 64th in -1 is amazing. Yahoo's got him 149th. He's 92nd in points. His ADP was 95. That's actually not a bad thing. But you know that when you draft Draymond, it's got to be real specific because you're taking a gigantic points hit. 7 rebounds and 6 assists is fantastic. A steal, a block, we like more steals, but they're pretty good numbers. You hit 40% of his threes. Can't really trust that. But 8.6 points. He's not for everybody. So while we might look at him as 64th in -1 because he was, doesn't mean that if he's sitting there in round 6 for you or for me or for anybody else, that he has to be taken. Because it has such a profound change on what you do. It's like Ben Simmons. These guys that can be really useful, but for some of you, they're just someone you just don't touch. You don't go near them. And that's okay as well. The comps for him are very intriguing. Year 7, Nemanja Bjelica, which was the last season Bjelica played in the NBA with the Warriors in their title year. He was really good as a role player. And then it was, interestingly enough, Marc Gasol in his championship year in Toronto. But we also know that year of Gasol in Toronto, things went downhill for him pretty quickly after that. Bjelica was out of the NBA after this season. Draymond is 34. He's going to suffer a big drop. He's going to be unplayable at some point in the next 2 years, I think. He's still smart. He still knows how to do things, but he also resorts to a lot more other things that aren't probably as savory. Also, can't wait for Draymond to opt out of his contract when it gets to the end there, so that the Warriors renounce his cap hold, and then so they've got room to sign more free agents, and then they just sign him back to the same contract. Oh, wait, that's what he thinks happens because he doesn't understand the salary cap. This is why when people say, only NBA players should do this, and why are you people talking about this? Because these guys don't know what's going on. He's out here talking, the Lakers, what they'll do, LeBron's got a player option, so he'll just opt out of his player option. Then they'll go and sign a max free agent, and then they'll just sign LeBron back after that to his max $50 million. Bro, it doesn't work that way. I'd like to see you try that. Opt out, the Warriors have to take your cap hold away, and then they can sign you to a minimum only. These guys don't know how this stuff works. Remember that. I don't always know how it works, and I don't know how to read a defense the way Draymond does either. But just because someone plays in the NBA doesn't mean their opinions are correct, because most of the time, they're not. I think they're not. let's go back to this. EPM 89th, CPM 94th percentile. Really good. What is amazing to me, and I'm not sure if amazing is the right word or not, but Draymond's still a really good defender, obviously. Blocked about a shot per game. But 8th percentile in contesting shots. 8th. His block percentage, 81st percentile. So he blocked shots at a good rate. His rim defense, 67th percentile. Not bad. Contesting shots, 8th. He doesn't do it anymore. Doesn't do it. So he's like Draymond's draftability next season. You do worry again about a significant cliff. How does he play enough games? Do the minutes hold at 27? Does he block even fewer shots now because he just doesn't do that anymore? There are some legit concerns about what we do with Draymond, and the Warriors should have those concerns as well. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's a formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether it is speed or it's power or it's style that you're into, I'm not going to judge you based on what you're into. You might be into any of those things. You might be into stuff that eBay Motors doesn't provide. But that's okay, because eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts or pieces. His head went that way and his legs went that way. Your number one ride or die is two people understand that joke. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time and your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. Burning rubber. I feel that's a phrase from the 80s, yeah, that nobody said for 50 years, apart from me and every other person reading this ad at the moment. But that's okay, because we say burning rubber and we now associate it with eBay Motors. Because their guaranteed fit's great. You get the parts that you want for your car or your money back. And they're going to fit. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to US customers. Cool. Burn rubber. Having fun with ad reads is something that I pride myself on, as you're probably well aware. Let's do the next guy as a starter. And I am including him as a starter because he started, he got benched, he went back and started again, and now I just don't know what the hell to make of Klay Thompson. Klay was at times insufferable, honestly, this season, with a gigantic dose of sympathy for the stuff that he's gone through, and I just don't know what happens now. Does another team make a play to give him a max deal? Would anyone do that? I wouldn't. 34 years of age. He played 30 minutes in 77 games. He had some strong stretches. He still hit 39% of his threes, but like we said earlier with Curry, and obviously Curry's way better and aging a lot better for numerous reasons. But when your thing is you are one of the best shooters of all time and then you become a slightly above average shooter and the other stuff falls away, then what are you actually doing? He was 109th in -1 rankings, 73rd on Yahoo. We do not draft Klay there. His ADP was 75, and I was actually a little bit in on taking Klay around that 80, 90 mark just to get a scorer. 18 points, 3.5 threes, but this is where the problem lies, and it's always been this way for Klay, is that he's always been this perceived very good defender, but for fantasy, it was points, it was good efficiency, and it was high volume threes, especially in comparison to the rest of the league. And the rest of the league caught up with threes, and the other stuff fell away because 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.6 steals, and 0.5 blocks. There's nothing there. 43 from the field is putrid. 93 from the line is excellent. But like Steph, 50% on twos is not going to cut it. What is very intriguing, and maybe it's not intriguing, it's actually just funny, is the 2 best comps for him were year 12 of Wardell Curry the first. And his second best comp was year 11 of Wardell Curry the first. Senior. Dal, Steph's dad. That's the last and second last years of Dal in Charlotte. And Dal was a 3-point specialist 6th man. And maybe that's what he is now. Okay, here's a question for you. It's going to sound outrageous. Let's do this. Free agents coming up. Would you rather, at their respective contracts they're going to get, sign Klay Thompson to be your starter / 3-point shooting sixth man. Malik Monk to be your starter 3-point shooting sixth man, ball handler too. Isaiah Joe as your 3-point shooting sixth man. Who would you rather sign for that spot? That's where we are, I think, with Klay. He wasn't a disaster by any means. 78th percentile in EPM, 51st in CPM. But if I'm going to drop the washed watch on Steph as a joke, I did it on Klay a million times, so we've got to do it here. Because there were plenty of times this season where he just looked washed. He had a really hot stretch, but this is another interesting part, is that he started off slowly. We were like, what is going on? I think we dropped this guy. Then there was a lot of pushback. No, Klay's always a slow starter. He's going to have a top 40 run rest of season. He did have a little hot stretch, but when you go to dig in and grab that boost or that, as an athlete, you go to grab that, what can I do now? Let's really kick it into gear, and it doesn't come. Again, red flags everywhere. Like, it sort of came, but it's not there. He's not that guy anymore, unfortunately. What is very striking to me is his crafted defensive plus minus was the 6th percentile. Klay's claim to fame was an elite defender. Put him on point guard, shooting guard, small forwards, power forwards. Now he probably can only guard 3s and 4s, and he's not very good at it anymore. And we all know why. And that is where you lose a lot of that value. Let's talk about a positive thing on this team. Because the bucket, John Kuminga, arrived. I've never seen this happen. I've never seen a player call out a coach and be like, Coach, what are you doing? I need to play more. And the coach going, okay, to begin with. And then B, the player being proven right. I've never seen that happen. Hey, coach, you're a dumbass. Why aren't you playing me? Fine, John, play. And then, maybe I am a dumbass. Now, I think some of Kuminga's breakout, as you'll see by the numbers, may be a little rosier in your brain than what actually happened. But that's what we're here to discuss. He's still only 21 and a half, Kuminga. Incredibly young. 74 games, 26 minutes. And while we talk about the G League Ignite, we won't be talking about it for much longer because it's done. And we talk about the players and the lack of success that they've had. I think there's just a different sort of pathway. Their shooting, usually bad in the G League, improves slowly. It's hard. I feel like it's harder for them, for whatever reason, to have an immediate impact in the NBA, no matter a high level immediate impact. Jalen Green, 3 years in, we saw a little flash towards the end of this season. Kuminga did nothing. Scoot struggled, but he picked up towards the end. I don't know. But Kuminga's still got massive holes in his game. 172 in -1, 125th in points. He was actually drafted in 31% of leagues, surprisingly. He averaged 16 and 5 with 2 assists, 0.7 steals, 0.5 blocks, and 0.7 threes. And you'll notice that there are red flags there. 26 minutes a night. Now, he started, he moved to the bench. He never established a full, large load role. And I worry a little bit because Draymond's still there. Is Draymond a full-time center? I don't know. I don't think so. Wiggins is still there. Where does Kuminga just start over Wiggins? Does Kuminga go back to the bench next? I don't know. Because if they don't have Draymond at center, it's Draymond, to say Jackson Davis, and is it Wiggins at the 3 or is it Kuminga over Wiggins? When Kuminga moved into that starting lineup, he went on an absolutely torrid shooting stretch. Elite 3-point shooting, elite 2-point shooting, boosted his numbers, and that all faded away as the season went on. And in the end, he hit 32% of his 3s, 53% only on his 2s. When he was so 58 on his 2s, but 53 overall, and he was a 60% plus 2-point guy. He gets no assists, no steals, no blocks, not a great rebounder, and takes no 3s. In fact, if I go down to the bottom of this graphic, 18th percentile on 3-point attempt rate. And I would think if you're not taking that many 3s, you need to be finishing a 2-point range at 60+%, and that's why there's some concerns here. The 2 comps for him are very eye-opening. It's rookie of the year Grant Hill, and it's rookie year Vince Carter, who both came into the league older at about Kuminga's age. But that's interesting. And it's also another one of those things where we talk about age in draft classes, and that Kuminga may have struggled for year 1 and 2, but he's 3 years in, and he's younger than Grant Hill and Vince Carter were as rookies. 79th percentile EPM is 66th in crafted. It was clearly positive signs for Kuminga, but overall at the moment, there is not a good category league fantasy player here yet. It needs 7 to 8 more minutes. He needs improvement in in efficiency. The field goals, sure, they're pretty good. But below average rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, threes, and free throws does not make a good fantasy player. And part of the lack of appeal he's had from a category fantasy perspective is that this has been the shape of his game for years. He's going to need to be in a scenario where he is playing 33 minutes a night, where he is getting 28 usage, and has developed a lot of those other things, and I'm not 100% sure. Great burst, great explosion this season, tapered a lot. And that's where we just have to have a little bit of concern, a little bit of pushback, I guess, on the narrative of this guy being awesome. And I'll say the same thing about Brandin Podziemski, because he was a revelation as a rookie. You don't expect a guy picked at number 20 on a team with Chris Paul, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry to be a starter and be a very good starter and be better than a lot of those players for most of the year. He had some moments of being good in fantasy, but overall, it didn't end up being awesome. He played 27 minutes a night, more than Kuminga. He's 21. He played 74 games. I'm honestly impressed that he played as much as he did. He had an unbelievably good fantasy profile, but we didn't really know how it would all translate coming out of a small school after transferring where he played like 2 minutes in Illinois as a freshman. He averaged 9 points in those 27 minutes. That's really low, obviously. 1.2 dribbles, but 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 0.8 steals, and 0.2 blocks. The high assists and high rebounds is in direct contrast to the things that Kuminga does. So Kuminga scores more, but more points, more threes, more rebounds. I think it was more steals as well for Podziemski. The shooting for him, though, was bad. Well, that's not true. The fantasy shooting numbers, 45 from the field is bad. 63 is terrible from the line. 39 from 3 is awesome, but only 50 from 2 is bad too. But that happens a lot for rookies. I would not be shocked to see him be a 40% three-point guy, a 75% free throw guy, a 54% two-point guy as early as next season, averaging 14 points. Already an elite rebounder for his position. Very good passer. 87th percentile in passing rating and how good you are as a passer. That's amazing. His top comps were rookie year Joe Johnson and rookie year Josh Giddey. A lot of that is the shooting concerns there with Giddey, but the high rebounding, high assist numbers. I think they've definitely found something in Podziemski. Is he a full-time lead point guard? Probably not. Probably not. In fact, I don't really know what sort of a player he ends up being. So I'm a little confused with that. But we need to see if Klay and Chris Paul are gone, he is a 30-plus minute a night guy next season without too much concern and a very easy fantasy draftable guy. You just got to really worry about the free throws and the shooting and get some more scoring in there. But impressive nonetheless. This guy was whatever word you want to use as the opposite of impressive, because Andrew Wiggins stunk. We have got many, many examples of Andrew Wiggins, and this is, let me be very, very clear, this is not a criticism at all, because everyone responds differently. But Andrew Wiggins needs to be very finely tuned mentally to be able to play awesome basketball. And when things are going on off the court, personal life, health of a family member, maybe things not going completely correct in the locker room, even back to the COVID vaccination days. When something is off, he is massively off, checked out even. And that's what happened, I feel. He's 29. He's not just trash now. He's in the middle, but 29 is the peak age. 71 games, 27 minutes. He ranked 208th in -1 leagues. His ADP was 90. I was okay with him at around 120, but he's always been a bad category league player, apart from that one little run in the Warriors championship year. But no one could have predicted this. 13 points. 0.6 steals. The man averaged 1.8 a year ago. 1.7 assists, under 5 rebounds. Remember when he said, I figured out rebounding is just about if you try hard, you get them? Remember he said that? Well, when you say stuff like that out loud, Wiggo, and then you don't deliver, you know what that tells us? That you don't try. If you say that, oh man, rebounding, all you got to do is try and you get them, and then you don't get them, that means you're not trying. That's as simple as that. It's not as simple as that, but if you claim it's as simple as that, then that's the inference that everyone's going to have. Bro doesn't care. He is not trying. Under 50% on his twos, 36% on his threes, bad free throws again, although they did improve as the season went on. He was just terrible. And honestly, just wouldn't draft him. He's never had a good fantasy game. And now we saw just a bunch of stuff go wrong. And maybe they do just start Kuminga over Wiggins. His top comps were year 8 of Jeff Green. Jeff Green gets comped to a lot of players. And Ken Norman in year 5. But this stuff is gross. 44th percentile EPM, 57th in CPM, but deflections 33rd percentile. Used to be an impactful defender. Just stop doing it. Did he have like 1 steal in his first 20 games or something? Don't fact check. Well, actually, do fact check me so I know the exact answer. It's not exactly that, but it's something close. He just stunk. And again, when Podziemski's there, Kuminga is there, they shouldn't be coming in saying he is locked in as our starter. They might do it, but they shouldn't be. The last guy I want to talk about as a starter is Trayce Jackson-Davis. Jackson-Davis is old. 24 years of age. I did not like him as a prospect. I thought he was short, 6'9" as a center. Don't like that. A guy that dominated as a much older upperclassman in college, red flaggy to me. Wasn't convinced that his blocks would come in the NBA. Didn't think he could shoot. I think that part's right. But he was great. You worry about what the actual ceiling is of his overall game, but whatever. 233rd in -1 doesn't really tell the full story. 8 and 5 in 17 minutes with 1 block on 70% shooting. He started for chunks of the season, which again, as pick 55 sounds insane. Was it 55 or 57? It was very late. And you would have to think that he is the front runner to be a 25-minute-a-night player next season. And that should get you 10 and 6, 10 and 7, 1.7 blocks, 1.6 blocks. He could pass when he played at Indiana. So if Paul is gone, if what happens with Draymond, who knows? This might be a future, let's say, 4-season peak for Trayce Jackson-Davis as a top 90 fantasy player. Free throws are bad, 56%, but 70 from the line. We know how to deal with a bad free throw guy. For some of you, you don't use him. For others, you do, and you know how to build around it. But blocks, field goals, passing upside, scoring upside, way more minutes. 69th percentile as a rookie in EPM and CPM is impressive. Contesting at the rim frequency, 98th percentile. That's huge. And his 2 comps, year 3 Dan Gafford and year 4 Dan Gafford. And we know what happened to year 5 Dan Gafford. Not saying that Gafford's a great player, he's not. But he's solid as a role player. And I think Jackson-Davis has got more upside from that. So a lot of it's going to come down to what they do with their rotation, their roster in the offseason. But I'm expecting both him and Podziemski to be 12-team draftable players, I think. I think that's where I'm at with them at this early point. Let's go through a couple of other guys who I don't consider really any chance to be starters on this team. And one of those is Christopher Paul, who is now 39 years of age. He played 58 games and 26 minutes. And there were some really clear correlations with Paul. When he started, he was fine. Not fine, he was usable. When Draymond wasn't there, he was usable. When Draymond played, Paul came off the bench and barely played. 58 games, 26 minutes, hadn't come off the bench until this season. He's still ranked 106th. His ADP was 73. So honestly, if you took him in the 70s, 80s, you didn't actually lose a huge amount. As per usual, he had an injury. He's old. It's going to happen. 9 points, 4 rebounds, 6.8 assists, 1.2 steals, but he's old. The 2-point percentage already started to drop off in Phoenix last season, down to under 50%. This is what happens. He still can pass, but also when you get to that age and that shot's not there and people aren't scared of the elbow jumper, then again, people can play the pass and not the shot, and your effectiveness wanes pretty quickly. Not many players play into year 17, so there's not many comps. The Jason Kidd year 17 one makes sense. That was actually pretty closely ranked. The next one was Terry Porter year 17. That wasn't that close. He was still okay. Again, like we can say, we know what Chris Paul was, a perennial top 10 fantasy player, and he's not that anymore, very obviously. But 78th percentile EPM, 76th in crafted is still really good. But he's just not that guy anymore, and he's just not going to be, I don't think, a draftable player next season. His box creation, 87th percentile. So I bring that up just to say that, A, that's the worst number of his career. He's never had a lower creation number than he did this season. Meaning that we know who he is at this point, and you can't really, a team decided not to really run all that stuff through him, and it hurt all of his numbers. And you would think that it stays around that level or drops even further. Not going back to like that high level it used to be. And that's just what happens. No matter how good you were at your peak, it comes for everybody. Apart from LeBron. Moses Moody. We're heading into year 4 for Moody, and we have not really seen anything, and that is not because he's bad. It's just because he's never really played. One of those guys that I was very high on in the draft, much higher than where he was picked. I'm probably wrong, but I still don't know. I still haven't seen it. He's had a couple of opportunities to start, but in terms of his fantasy game overall, while I think he can be a useful starting NBA player, I feel like to be good enough for fantasy, he needs a very specific set of circumstances to get him there, and I'm just not sure that'll ever happen. He's still only 21. He turned 22 really soon. He played 18 minutes a night. He ranked 302nd, averaging 8 points on 46% shooting, 36 from 3. 0.9 assists is pretty rough. 0.6 steals is pretty rough. 0.4 blocks is not bad. He's not a bad shot blocker for a guard. His best comps, year 3 Kelly Oubre, back in Washington, and year 3 Nick Batum. But again, I still think he's all right. 62nd percentile in EPM and in crafted. But look at that offensive load, 43rd percentile. When he was on the court, he's just a nothing player. And that reflects in those numbers. And then he's not doing enough with defensive stuff or elite level shooting that maybe Kerr is justified in not playing him enough. I would love to see him on another team, getting an opportunity to play a larger role. But I also think that it would almost have to be a really bad team where he gets high usage and he becomes a player that can just generate some numbers through scoring only. Because I'm not sure about the other stuff coming, but we just haven't seen enough. So I'm not out on Moses Moody, but I've lost a lot of the faith. Last player I want to talk about is Lester Quinones, who I think was a nice little surprise. Played some regular rotation minutes at times. I think it was a game that he closed over Klay Thompson. The numbers here aren't going to wow you. 454th in -1. He averaged 4 points with 2 rebounds and an assist. He shot under 40% with under 70 from the line. He did shoot 36 on threes, but the twos were bad. He's 18th percentile on EPM, 17th on usage. Couldn't finish at the rim, 3rd percentile. All that stuff looks pretty rough, yeah? But 23 years of age, played 11 minutes a game only. The shooting is encouraging. And I just think there's something a little bit here with Quinones. It's only a deeper league scenario. I don't think he ever develops into a starter. But in terms of him versus a Guy Santos, versus a Gary Payton even, I think that there is, like, if I had him on my team, real life or fantasy, I'd be like, let's give it another year. Let's see what happens. Because his improvement this year was really impressive. And I think there is a role for him to be a hybrid. I'll use the name that I've used earlier in the show, Malik Monk. A guy that's got some shooting ability, some passing ability, some dribbling ability, some hybrid guard, sixth man, overall best case scenario outcome upside. It's a long way to get there, but not someone that I'm completely out on. A little bit interested in Lester Quinones. And that is the Golden State Warriors that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about Šarić. I'm not going to talk about Garuba. I'm not going to talk about Payton. They are a team very clearly at the crossroads. Do they trade Draymond Green? What happens with Klay? Do they commit to Kuminga and Podziemski and Jackson Davis now as key parts of the team? We will find out. Thumb it up. Leave your comments. Double bang it. Guys, we're done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.